travels and adventures of little Baron Trump and his wonderful dog Bulgar. Chapter 4 has the illustrations. The elder Baron and Baroness grew very thin, and you can see how sunken in and pointy some of the facial features of the drawing are. Our family coachman becomes nothing but skin and bone, and at least he still has calf muscles, but his arms and legs otherwise look very bony in that. The 10 bottles of medicine brought by the 10 doctors. When it comes to that sort of thing, sometimes it does take a whole series of attempts. Only one of the bottles is illustrated with an RX symbol and writing. 4 of them have tags up at the top. The fowls that wouldn't scratch and so betrayed me. A waxing crescent moon with some chickens and a rooster. How the elder Baron lost flesh, worrying about the investment of my money, effect of his anxiety on the rest of the household. I take the matter in hand and devise ways to increase my fortune. I become extremely wealthy. When 8 years of age, I am seized with an uncontrollable desire to visit faraway lands and begin to pack up. The elder Baron objects. How I set to work to get his consent. Wild doings of my playfellows. How we stormed the castle, broke up the hawking, ruined the fox hunt, summoned the 10 doctors, and set fire to the neighboring fields. The elder Baron grows weary of my doings and consents to let me go. My delight and Bulgar's joy. And there is a slight implication of outlaw in the term fellow. The question which now occupied my father's mind to the exclusion of all other thoughts was how to invest this large sum of money so that upon my attaining my 21st year, I would be provided with a sufficiently large income to live as a baron should, particularly when he belonged to so famous a family as ours. The fact of the matter is, my father permitted this question to prey upon his peace of mind to such an extent that he lost flesh perceptibly. My mother, too, seeing his lamentable condition, began to fret and worry to such a degree that she likewise became greatly emaciated. With their loss of flesh, naturally their appetites dwindled, and little or no food was provided, or anyway, no more than was just sufficient to satisfy Bulgar's and my wants. Whereupon the servants began to lose flesh, both the indoor and outdoor ones, and in their desperate attempt to keep body and soul together, the horses and cattle were fed upon short rations, and the consequence was they too soon began to fall away. So it grew to be quite a serious sight to see my poor father and mother reduced to mere skin and bones, driven about the country by mere shadows for coachmen and footmen, and drawn by 4 horses whose bones fairly rattled under their skins when they were coaxed or beaten into a lazy trot. Bulgar and I alone retained our plumpness and good spirits. At length I determined to infer and put a speedy end to this deplorable state of affairs. I exacted from the elder baron a solemn promise that he would follow my directions to the letter and not raise any objections, no matter how wild or unreasonable they might appear to him or to my mother. Then, bidding him to partake of some good, succulent food, retire early, and get a nice long sleep, I saluted him respectively and said, "Baron, until tomorrow morning." I had scarcely finished my breakfast when my door opened and the elder baron walked into the room. He looked much refreshed. The color had returned to his cheek, the gleam to his eye. He was already a different man. "Here, gracious sir," I began, handing him a parchment roll, "is a list of all the best-known almanac makers in our land. Have interviews with them at once, and purchase from them the right to furnish weather prognostications for the coming year." The elder baron began to expostulate. "Baron," I remarked sternly, raising my hand, "a true knight has but one word to give." He was silent and motioned me to continue. I did so as follows. "Respected parent, when you have secured this right from each of them, return to me." In a few days my father had accomplished his mission. He entered my room and put into my hands the needful concessions from every noted almanac maker in the land. Again I bade him refresh himself thoroughly, get a good night's rest, and see me in the morning. As Bulgar and I were returning from breakfast, the elder baron presented himself at the door of my apartments. He looked strong and well. His face had filled out again, and his step had recovered its old-time elasticity. Again I placed a roll of parchment in his hands and said to him, "Scatter the contents of that parchment evenly and plentifully throughout each almanac, on the pages devoted to the months of November, December, January, and February." He looked at me inquiringly, and his lips began to move. "Noble sir," said I, ere a sound had issued from his mouth, "in our family, knights have always been without fear and without reproach." He bent his lofty form in silence and withdrew. Possibly the reader may have a little curiosity to know the contents of the parchment roll which I placed in the hands of the elder baron on this occasion. If brevity be the soul of wit, it was witty. If a fair round hand be the garb of truth, it was truthful. Be this as it may choose to be, the words which my pen had traced on that parchment roll read as follows: "All signs point to an extremely cold winter. Indications are that the coming winter will be the severest for half a century. Forecasts all give the same answer: a winter of exceptional length and bitter coldness. Most skilled prognosticators agree in predicting a degree of low temperature rarely reached in these latitudes. About this time, expect unusual cold. Protect plants. Now, look well to your winter vegetables. Secure them from the extreme frost. Double your supply of winter fuel. Now look for fierce snowstorms. Expect bitter cold weather during all this month. Prepare for most unusual hailstorms. Be on your guard for sudden and penetrating north winds. House cattle warmly for all this month. Beware of deadly blizzards. They will come with a furious onset." After a few days' absence, my father returned to the manor house. His arrival was duly announced to me by Bulgar, to whom I said, "Go, good Bulgar, and conduct the baron to my apartment." Away he bounded with many a sportive leap and bark, and soon returned, ushered in the elder baron with the joyous manner so common to him when active in serving me. "I have obeyed thee, my son," murmured the elder baron with a stately arc in his bending form. "'Tis well," I replied, motioning him to be seated. "And now, honored guide of my childhood's uncertain feet, give heed to my words. Our task is almost done. In a few days the investment of this money, which has occasioned thee so much anxiety, fairly robbing thee of thy heart's service, will be complete, and what is better still, so fortunately invested that thou shalt, being able to call thyself the father of one of the richest children in the kingdom. Hearken, Baron, now go to the leading markets of the land, and put every fur merchant under written contract to deliver unto thee in early autumn all the pelts, dressed, undressed, are on the backs of the owners, of which they will guarantee the delivery under their hands and seals." The words had scarcely fallen from my lips ere the elder Baron had risen from his chair and caught me warmly to his breast. "My son," he cried, as he stroked my protuberant brow, "it is a master stroke. It is worthy of a governor of a province. I long to begin the good work. Permit me to set out this very night." "Wait, Baron," said I, leading him to his chair and gently constraining him to be seated. "Wait, Baron, there is somewhat yet to be said. When thou hast completed the purchase of all the pelts which are expected to enter the kingdom this year, expend the rest of the money in purchasing all the wood, coal, and peat thou canst find. Not that I would draw profit from the poor man's slender store, but simply to keep others from wronging him by combining against him, as they would surely do upon the first publication of the weather predictions." "Ah, little Baron," exclaimed my father, "how thoughtful! For as thou sayest, we must not lay a burden on the poor man's shoulders." Such was the diligence with which my father carried my plans to completion, that in a single month I had bought and sold again the entire product of the fur market, at a small advance, it is true, but large enough to make me an extremely rich man. It was so gently and skillfully done that no one ever suspected the clever ruse by which I was enabled to acquire riches enough to set out upon my travels, just as my inclination might prompt, and to know that were I to be captured and held for ransom by the most grasping freebooters, my bankers would have gold enough to ransom me. Upon the completion of my 8th year, I was seized with an uncontrollable desire to enter at once upon the fulfillment of my long-cherished plans, to visit faraway lands inhabited by strange and curious people. My own home, my own language, my own people wearied me and wore upon me. In my sleep I paced the deck of staunch vessels, shouted my orders, crowding sail and calm and reefing in threatening weather. I passed my time from morn till night packing cases with suitable articles for traffic with these savages, so that I might be able to penetrate into those interiors never visited by civilized man, and ascend rivers closed since the world began to the white-winged messengers of trade and commerce. But strange to say, my father, urged thereto, possibly by the entreaties of my mother, firmly and resolutely set his face against my project of leaving home. I was beside myself with disappointment. I entreated, I implored, I threatened. For the first time in my life, it pains me even now to make the confession, I was guilty of a certain disrespect to the authors of my being. Bulgar, after studying the situation for several days, reached the conclusion that the elder Baron was in some way the cause of my unhappiness, and it required at times my sternest command to restrain him from setting his teeth in the calves of the elder Baron's legs as he quitted my apartment after some stormy interview. "What?" cried I, in tones tremulous with grief. "Am I doomed to waste the splendid gifts with which nature has endowed me shut within the walls of this petty town, whose most boisterous scenes are the brawls of its marketplaces, whose people never witness a grander pageant than the passing of a royal troop of horse? It must not, it shall not be. Thou hast said thyself that I am no ordinary child to be amused with ball and top, and entertained with pitchforks. But the elder baron had hardened his heart, and all my pleading was to no purpose. And yet I did not despair of gaining my point in the end. The continual dropping of water finally wore away the rock. I made up my mind now to move the elder baron to acquiesce in my project of leaving home by resorting to entirely different tactics. Said I to myself, he wishes me to be a child. I'll be one. And forthwith I set about making friends with every mischievous little rogue in the town. Not a single juvenile ne'er-do-well escaped my attentions. The more rampant, active, and tireless his power of mischief, the closer I wrapped him in my affections. From gray dawn to dewy eve, these chums and boon companions of mine flocked about the castle. They worshipped me as their leader, and yielded an implicit obedience to my commands, as were I possessed of some mastery over them. The elder baron saw the gathering cloud, and bent his head as if to meet the coming storm with better chance of resisting it. Came there a dinner party. The choicest burgundy was found to have been spirited away, and the bottles filled with common claret. Did the elder baron meet his friends in the fields for a trial with the hawks? It was only to discover that they had been so overfed as to sit stupidly placid when the hood was removed. Let the cook be told that the guests were expected, that he must be careful to have the little dumplings of his soup extra delicate. To the elder baron's horror, a cherry stone would be found in the center of each little dumpling. One of my coadjutors was venturesome enough to pilfer the elder baron's snuff box and fill it with pepper. The result may be imagined. Another good care to pour water into all the tinder boxes before the guests called for their pipes. Upon attempting to rise from the table, here and there a cue would be found securely tied to the back of the chair. One of my favorite exploits was to station myself on the first landing of the stairway and hold the bridge like Horatius Cockleys of old. My wild band of 24 young barbarians, rushing madly up the staircase with screams, yells, and vociferations, which would have done credit to any horde of real savages I have ever visited, while I, with my wooden saber, beat down their sticks, occasionally rapping too bold a youngster on the knuckles and sending him bawling to the foot of the stairway, to Bulgar's infinite amusement, as he always insisted upon taking part in the fray and gloried in my prowess. At last, to my great joy, I noticed that the elder baron showed signs of surrender. Like a prudent general, I ordered an attack all along the line. There was to be a fox hunt the next day. I directed one of my trusted lieutenants to feed the hounds all the raw meat they could swallow about an hour before the start. 10 others, most fleet-footed and glib-tongued, I dispatched to the houses of the 10 leading physicians and surgeons of the town and its immediate neighborhood, with the same message to each, namely, that every man, woman, and child at the manor house had been taken violently ill, and the greatest haste must be made to come with their medicine chests so that the epidemic might be checked. The 10 doctors galloped into the courtyard at nearly the same moment, only to find the elder baron and his friends gathered on the platform and holding a whispered consultation over the strange actions of the hounds. The angry disciples of Galen refused to prescribe for the poor animals and galloped away again with their well-filled holsters thumping against their legs. Meanwhile, I had not been idle. To the claws of a score or more of the elder baron's fowls, I tied a kind of fusee of my own invention, so inflammable that the slightest friction would cause it to burst into flame, and then I turned them loose in the fields and gardens adjoining the family hall. They had been cooped up all the summer and were overjoyed at the prospect of a good, comfortable scratching time mid the dry leaves and stubble of the open fields. The gamekeepers by this time had succeeded in arousing the hounds somewhat from their stupor when the cry of "Fire, fire!" went up. The hunting party hastily dismounted and joined the servants in the mad rush for buckets of water. I was sitting calmly in my apartment with Bulgar by my side, and when the alarm was raised, the elder baron at first was inclined to think that although my workmanship was plainly visible in the fabrics of mischief, which consisted in overfeeding the hounds and summoning the 10 doctors to the manor house on a wild goose chase, yet the breaking out of the fire in the neighboring gardens and fields was really something with which I had nothing to do. The return of a venerable old Dominic rooster, which had been either too feeble or too lazy to explode the fusees attached to his claws, settled the matter, however. The elder baron's mind was now clear as to who had conceived the crime in which his poor fowls had so unwittingly become the accomplices. That night, Bulgar and I went to bed with light hearts. The elder baron had at last consented to let us set out on our first journey in quest of strange adventures among the curious people of far-away lands.